Okay, everyone, good to see you. Here for the Bible study on Elijah. And we left it with Elijah is on the run. I'm calling it Elijah's human side this week. That'll make sense in a minute if you haven't heard the story. If you remember the last thing that was said, let's see. Well, in verse 2 of chapter 19, we're in 1 Kings 19. Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them," one of the prophets, one of her Baal prophets who were slaughtered by Elijah. So Elijah does have a death threat. You'd expect Elijah to be confident that God was watching over him, but as we talked about, what happens is Elijah was afraid and ran for his life, which we talked about is a very human thing to do. So hopefully when things like that happen that don't go our way, hopefully it's not a situation where our lives are involved, but where things are looking kind of grim. Maybe one of the first places to go is, has God abandoned me? Or is God not think this is important enough, or whatever reasons, but we'll see that this is not the truth about God. Okay, so I did finish the last time saying when he came to Beersheba in Judah, I started talking about that, and I didn't have my map, but I have it up now. So remember that Mount Carmel was up here. That's where the big event happened. And he ends up down here. He ran all the way down here. We're talking days. And it's significant in that he didn't just leave the Mount Carmel area. He left the entire kingdom of Israel. Remember how this was Israel and this is Judah. He left Israel going into Judah. If you think, okay, well maybe he's thinking it'll be safe there, he didn't stop there. He went all the way down to the southern part of Judah. So when he came to Beersheba in Judah, let's keep going with that story. I don't have it here. This is all messed up still from last time. Well, I'll just have to read it for you. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the desert. So he's going even further into the desert, down south in Judah. He came to a broom tree, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." So how would you describe how Elijah's feeling? Kind of hopeless, it sounds like. Given up, maybe. Wants to just die. Depression comes to mind. What we might today diagnose as clinical depression even. And maybe you felt that way or know somebody who has. It's not a good place to be. I'm thinking also that it really has come after such a big high for Elijah, having represented God and bringing the people back to worshiping Him, and then suddenly he's gone into this fear. So for us, God's response may not be as miraculous as what happens to Elijah, but rest assured God does care and He's looking out for us. So what does God do for Elijah? For Elijah, this happens. Now if I can find that, yes. Verse 5. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. Elijah did. All at once, An angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The Lord is truly compassionate. He sends an angel to take care of him. And then, in verse 7, the angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Lots of traveling going on. Remember how I pointed out how far he went down to get to Beersheba, which might explain why he's saying the journey is too much for you. But God in his plans had another long journey planned here, another 40 days and 40 nights going to Mount Horeb. Reach Horeb, the mountain of God. I wanted, what's special about Mount Horeb? Another name for that mount is Mount Sinai. Ring a bell? What's special about Mount Sinai? It was where Moses got our 10 Commandments. Mount Sinai. So maybe Elijah was thinking what the Lord said to Moses, "My presence will go with you and I will give you rest." And let's look at what happens. Continuing on, verse 9. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." So here we have the Lord spoke to Elijah. He's not angry, but with a probing question. And Elijah's answer sounds like he's feeling pretty sorry for himself and forgetting all the good that happened. And he also forgot that he's not alone. It's interesting what God does then in verse 11. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So you got wind, earthquakes, fire, all associated with God's power and judgment. And Elijah had just seen a lot of that with the fire. But for poor Elijah, zapped of strength, he needed gentleness. Elijah felt God in the gentle whisper or blowing. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." Sounds like I just hit the wrong thing, but that is a repeat. Verse 13. God asks Elijah the same question, and he gets the same answer. Maybe what Elijah was most needed was a restored sense of purpose. Maybe he also needed to know God was still in charge, still had a plan. We see that in the next words from God to Elijah. The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Maholah, to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him." this is important news for Elijah. God assured him that he, God, was still sovereign and working for Israel. God assured him that he, Elijah, was still useful. He commissioned him to anoint a new generation of political and religious leaders. So Elijah learned that God's plans were bigger than him and would continue far beyond his ministry. That can be a case that happens too when you're caught up in doing the Lord's work, and then the Lord's having you off to something that's quite not as exciting. It's good to remember that the ministry will still go on, and that is the most important thing. And he has other plans for you. God had a place and purpose for Elijah, but God didn't depend on him entirely. God also gently corrected him. Did you see that? Elijah was saying he was the only one left. He kept repeating that. But God points out that there were 7,000 that God could count on. This was a correction, but also encouraging for Elijah to let him know he wasn't alone. So I look at this whole period, this human side, I look at this as a little hiccup, a human slip. We all have them. In an otherwise trusting servant of God, which we all hope to be. And that's where I'll stop here. Elijah, there's more for him, but we'll stop here for now, and you have a good week, and take care, and stay healthy, and may the Lord be with you.